Hello world, Ryan from the West here, and today I have a question for you. How many Pokemon types are there? Now, the easy answer is 18. These 18. But what if I told you there was one more type that's already in the games? The sound type. I know what you're thinking. There technically is already a 19th type, which is Stellar. But I don't count the Stellar type as its own type, as it doesn't behave like any of the others. No Pokemon can naturally have it. The only moves that can be Stellar type are Terra Starstorm and Terra Blast if your Pokemon is a Terra Stellar type. It doesn't have any weaknesses or resistances. It's only super effective against terrestrialized Pokemon, so not another type. And it didn't return in Legend ZA. It's a type that's only accessible in battle if you terrestrialize your Pokemon into the Stellar type. So it's less of a type and more of a different form. But Nintendo already has the groundwork in place to make an actual 19th type, which would be the Sound type. There are already mechanics in the games right now that support the Sound type, specifically with moves, given that there are 33 moves currently considered as sound-based moves. These moves, like Growl, Sing, and Supersonic to name a few, have been classed together for the purposes of certain abilities, items, and even other moves. For example, the ability Soundproof makes a Pokemon immune to these sound-based moves. This fits right in with other abilities that make a Pokemon immune to a type, like Levitate. There is also the ability Liquid Voice, which turns sound-based moves into the Water type, similar to the ability Pixelate, which changes normal type moves into a Fairy type move. Sound-based moves are also boosted by the ability Punk Rock, the signature ability of Toxtricity, and this ability also halves damage from incoming sound-based moves. There's also the Throat Spray item, which raises a Pokemon's special attack after using a sound-based move, and the move Throat Chop, which makes it so that the target can't use any sound-based moves for 2 turns. So, with all this in place already, if Nintendo did want to introduce a new type in the next games, they wouldn't really need to do much. I mean, all you would have to do is make all of these sound-based moves turn into the sound type. But what would a fully fleshed out sound type look like if it were to be introduced? Well, let's look at how it would interact with the other types. Pokemon has only introduced 3 new types over the course of 30 years: Dark, Steel, and Fairy. With Dark and Fairy, these were introduced to balance out a previously strong type. Dark was introduced to add a weakness to the already overpowered Psychic type, and Fairy was introduced to combat Dragon types. So it isn't just a matter of adding a new type, we need to at least try to balance out the type chart and also make these type relationships make sense logically. I've tried my best here. Firstly, the sound type would be super effective to itself, similar to how Ghost and Dragon behave. This is because in the real world, you can use sounds to cancel out other sounds, which is how things like active noise cancellation works. I don't fully understand the science, but if you play 2 sounds at the same volume, but completely opposite to each other, they will cancel each other out. So the same principle is being applied here, where a sound type move would be used effectively against a sound type Pokemon. For other types that sound would be super effective against, I went with things that conduct sound effectively, or at least more effectively than just sound traveling through regular air. Matching these up to things that are Pokemon types, Water and Steel both conduct sound better than air, so the sound type would therefore be super effective against those 2 types. On the opposite end of the type chart, sound would also resist these 2 types, as in a similar vein, they don't hinder the sounds, they amplify them. So Water and Steel would actually be beneficial to sound. I also made the sound type super effective against the Psychic type. Now, currently Psychic is only weak to types that are common fears: the dark, bugs, and ghosts. But a loud or unexplained sound can be quite scary, or at the very least startling, like death whistles or a loud explosion. Also, loud noises can be quite distracting, which makes it hard for you to focus your mind on something. So sound types would be a hindrance and a fear to psychic types. So let's flip it around, and what types would be super effective against sound? Well, this was a little trickier, but hear me out. I decided that things that utilize sound, not necessarily create it, as that would just be most types, but actually utilize sound to their advantage would be a good place to start. My first thoughts were animals that use sounds to help them, like bats and some birds using echolocation, and insects like ants using high-pitched sounds to communicate. So I would make flying and bug super effective against sound, as flying animals and bugs use and manipulate sound to their advantage. I also want to add the ghost type to the pool of types super effective against sound. My main reason for this is that ghosts are said to produce and manipulate sounds. Think of the footsteps you hear in a haunted house, or the boo or shrieking from a ghostly apparition. That is a spirit using sound to their advantage, in this case, scaring you. So, to wrap up the type chart, this leaves sound with, including itself, 4 types it is super effective against, 4 types that are super effective against it, 2 types that resist it, and 2 that it resists. This hopefully isn't too over or underpowered, as it sits pretty firmly in the mid-range for each of the type effectivenesses. Now onto the next part of introducing the new type, the Pokemon themselves. Both when Steel and Fairy were introduced, Nintendo went and changed certain Pokemon to be the new type. In Steel's case, it was just adding Steel to the Magnemite line, but Fairy actually changed 22 Pokemon's types, either fully, like in the case of Clefairy, or adding a type, like Jigglypuff. So let's look at some Pokemon that might fit the new sound type. First, let's look back on the sound-based moves, as looking through the list, there are actually a few that are signature moves of certain Pokemon. Firstly, Chatter, which is the signature move of Chatot. This actually used your console's microphone to record audio that it would play in the game when you use this move. I would make Chatot a sound flying type. I mean, come on, it's a bird whose head is a musical note. Another signature move that is sound-based is Relic Song, which is what Meloetta uses to change from aria to pirouette form. Meloetta is another perfect example of musical notes being used on the Pokemon's body. Like Chatot, it would also have its normal type replaced, becoming either Sound Psychic or Sound Fighting depending on the form. Looking through the list of sound-based moves, and another move that is exclusive to a certain Pokemon is Torch Song, which is Skeledirge's signature move. I don't mind changing Skeledirge to Fire Sound instead of Fire Ghost. Yes, it does mean that it doesn't interact with Meowscarada or Quaquaval's secondary typing anymore, but that's not actually a prerequisite for the starters, it was always just a nice touch. Plus, Skeledirge is based on an opera singer, so sound type fits quite well here. Similarly, I would also go back and change Primarina to the sound type. Again, messing with the type triangle set up with Decidueye and Incineroar, but Primarina also has a signature move that is sound-based, Sparkling Aria. Most of Primarina's Pokédex entries refer to its singing, especially during battle. Yes, this does mean that Liquid Voice simply changes all of its sound type moves, like Sparkling Aria, to the water type, but I don't think that's too big of an issue here. It will get Stab either way, and its Z move, Oceanic Operetta, which isn't a sound-based move, is the water type, so Sparkling Aria being changed to water from sound is still fine. Lastly, one more move that is a signature move and is sound-based is Toxtricity's Overdrive. Toxtricity is another Pokemon that is musical, with its Pokédex entries referencing it strumming its chest like a guitar. It is also seen in the band in the end credits of Sword and Shield along with Rillaboom and Obstagoon, but we'll get to those two later. I decided to keep Overdrive as a stab move for Toxtricity, so therefore I would have to change Toxtricity to Poison Sound. Now, there are a few more sound-based moves that are or were signature moves of certain Pokemon, like Kommo-o's Clanging Scales, Pyroar's Noble Roar, and Pangora's Parting Shot, but these Pokemon don't really lend themselves to being changed to the sound type. That's all for the Pokemon with signature sound-based moves, so let's look at some others that would be changed to sound type. Let's start with the first Pokemon that came to mind when I was making this video, the Whismur line. I mean, come on, their names are basically Whisper, Loud, and Explode and Loud. Plus, Loudred has speakers on its ears, which is literally mentioned in its Pokedex entry. They also all have the ability Soundproof as their regular ability, which I won't mind in this case. It just means that it simply removes a type that could be super effective against them. Another line of Pokemon with speakers on their ears are Noibat and Noivern. Both of their Pokedex entries refer to the ultrasonic waves that they emit. Noivern can also learn Boom Burst, and their names literally come from the word noise in English, or a word similar to noise or sound in the other languages. Though I did have a hard time picking between the flying or the dragon type to change, they do seem to be more based on bats than dragons, so they would be flying sound. I would also like to change Rillaboom to grass sound. This will complete a set of all three starter types having a dual sound type, given that we're changing Skeledirge and Primarina. Firstly, Rillaboom is a drummer, even playing the drums in the end credits of Sword and Shield. Rillaboom also does learn the now sound type Boom Burst, and its signature move is drum beating. Literally, it playing the drums is its signature move. Now, drum beating isn't a sound-based move, as the move itself actually just uses the drum to control vines, so that can stay as a grass-type move, though thematically it using a musical instrument is a good enough reason for it to be sound-type. The last Pokemon that appears in the end credits of Sword and Shield is Obstagoon. Obstagoon is the lead singer of this band of Pokemon, and its design is clearly a reference to the band Kiss. Obstagoon's Pokedex entries refer to its loud shout, and its entry in Sword specifically says that its shout is the move Obstruct, which, like Rillaboom, is its signature move, but isn't a sound-based move. I decided to change the entire Galarian Zigzagoon line to Dark Sound, to keep it consistent among the evolutions, but specifically keep its dark typing so it can be different enough to the original Zigzagoon. Plus, Obstruct is a dark type move, and even though it's a status move so Stab doesn't come into play, I still feel like Obstagoon's signature move should match at least one of its typings. Another line of Pokemon that would gain the sound type is Chingling and Chimecho. This one seems obvious. One's a bell and the other is a wind chime. Chingling's Japanese name comes from the onomatopoeia for jingling of bells and chimes, and its English name comes from chime and jingling, like jingling bells. Chimecho is obviously chime and echo, the word for sounds being reflected back at you. I would give them sound type as a secondary type, making them psychic sound. This does cause a small issue with Mega Chimecho becoming Psychic Steel, but this isn't the only time a Mega Evolution causes the secondary type to change completely. For example, Gyarados, Altaria, and Barbaracle. The last Pokemon I will change to the sound type would be Ordino. It learns a number of sound-based moves like Disarming Voice and Hyper Voice, plus its name comes from the word audio, like sound, and its Pokedex entries refer to its incredible sense of hearing akin to a radar. It also seems to be a doctor of some sort, which makes sense why its ears are like that. They're stethoscopes, so it can hear better. Everything about Ordino screams the sound type. I decided to make Ordino a pure sound type, and Mega Ordino would be Sound Fairy, meaning it doesn't lose Stab on Hyper Voice, and even without Mega Evolving, it gets stabbed for Disarming Voice. So that's how I think Nintendo can add the 19th type that I think they already have, the Sound type. What are your thoughts? What Pokemon would you change or add the Sound type to? What about how it interacts with other types on the type chart? Let me know in the comments below. I've been Ryan from the West. Good night.